Good afternoon. My name's Dan Daly, and I'm going to be talking about anomalous experiences. Well, what is an anomalous experience? Something like a hallucination would be an anomalous experience. Near-death experiences themselves would be anomalous experiences. If you hear a mental voice in your head, that would be an anomalous experience. Vivid dream or a lucid dream could be an anomalous experience. So there are a number of these types of things. This afternoon, I'm going to talk about 4 types of anomalous experiences that have happened in my family over the last 3 generations. And here's how I'm going to go about doing that. First of all, I'm going to introduce you to some members of my family. Then I'm going to match those folks up with an experience and describe the experience. I'll then give some observations and comments about the experiences, give a suggestion for those who have had experiences or may have them in the future as to what they can do to record those. And then I'll have a final thought. So let's get started. First, I want to introduce you to some members of my family. This is Mary Doman, born in St. Louis in 1883. Folks were German immigrants. They moved up to Buffalo, New York. And in Buffalo, she met a fellow named Jack Daly, and he's an engineer on the Pennsylvania Railroad. They got married in 1910. And their youngest child was born in 1919, and that was James, my dad. And Jimmy, or Kid Daly, as he was known in the neighborhood, married Lucille Gump in 1944. And their youngest child was born in 1952. And that was Dan, that's me. So you can see I haven't changed a bit over the years. So now that we've introduced some members of the family, I'm going to talk about some of the experiences. Start with my grandmother and a waking vision. And the place was Buffalo, New York, the Daly household. The year was 1931. The time was dawn. My grandmother was in bed, but she was awake. And what was she doing? Well, maybe, with 4 kids at home and her husband just back from a run on the railroad, maybe she was planning her day, the meal she was going to have, something like that. Maybe she was in bed thinking, this is nice and quiet. I'm going to kind of enjoy a few minutes of quiet here. Or maybe as a devout Catholic and a caring woman, she was saying a prayer for her Uncle Nimrod, who was seriously ill in the town of Nanticoke, Pennsylvania, about 300 miles to the southeast of the town of Buffalo. Whatever the case was, there at the foot of her bed, she saw the form of her Uncle Nimrod, was there for a few seconds, and then it was gone. My grandmother got up and went down and told the family and said, I think we're going to be hearing news about Nimrod. I think that he's passed away. And so indeed, later on that day, they got the news that her uncle had passed away in Nanticoke, Pennsylvania. My dad would have been about 11 years old at this time. So that's the first experience, my grandmother in a waking vision. The second experience was one for my dad, and that would be a vivid dream. So when I was a kid in the 60s, we lived in a town called Lewiston in New York, north of Niagara Falls. But we had an aunt, my mom's aunt, Aunt Em, who lived out in Albuquerque, New Mexico. And we used to visit out there, and in Em's living room was a lamp that her brother Fred had made and then given her as a gift. And this was special to my aunt. So fast forward here to 1968, spring of the year. My dad came downstairs for breakfast. He used to come down early and then go to work. I wasn't even up yet at this point. But he said to my mom, I had a dream. And she said, well, what was it? And so he said, well, I dreamed that I was in Em's living room out in Albuquerque, and that Em was standing there and she was crying. And as she was crying, she was pointing at this lamp that her brother Fred had made for her. And so my dad was troubled by this dream. So my mom and dad talked this over. They then got word that my Uncle Fred had died unexpectedly of a heart attack. 60 years old, a very active gentleman, but died unexpectedly. So that's the second experience, a vivid dream of my dad's. So the next two experiences are personal experiences of mine. So let's fast forward to 2012, February. My wife, Kathy, and I are in a car. We're heading down the interstate from North Dakota to Minneapolis. We had gotten a phone call the night before that my son, Devin, had been diagnosed with a brain tumor. He was in the hospital. His condition was serious. We were heading down there to see him and talk with doctors and so forth. So as you can imagine, I had a lot of things in my head as I was driving down the interstate that morning around 10 o'clock. A voice was in my head, and the voice said, "He will be welcome." It was a man's voice. I didn't recognize it. Not emotional, very matter of fact, just a simple declarative statement, "He will be welcome." So the last experience would be an inner sensation, and that happened a couple of days later. When we got down to Minneapolis, we learned that my son Devin's condition, he was terminal. He was moved into hospice. And Sunday night, we've been there a couple of days. My wife and I said, I think we'll head back to the hotel. My son had gone to sleep, so we told his wife we're going to head over to the hotel. My son Ian was there, and he said, "Sure, that sounds good. Why don't you go over?" So we did. We got to the hotel, cell phone rang. My son's wife was on the phone. She said, "Things are changing here. Come quickly." So we got back in the car and headed back over to the hospital. I was speeding, I have to admit it, running red lights. I got to an intersection and checked the light. It was red, but I was just going through the intersection. And I suddenly was overwhelmed by a feeling of complete and utter peacefulness. And this lasted 5 or 10 seconds. I said to myself, "He's gone." We continued over to the hospital, got there, got up to his room. He was still alive, but he was unconscious. And he did not regain consciousness. He died a couple of hours later. So those are the 4 anomalous experiences that I wanted to talk about. And now I'll make some observations. I'm a geologist. I study rocks and so forth. So I'm not a doctor. I'm not a psychologist or someone who deals with the brain or the human body. But I'm just going to make some simple observations about these experiences. So first of all, it seems to me that in each of these cases, that folks who experienced these were passive, that the experience basically happened to them. Now, in my grandmother's case, maybe she was, praying for her uncle. Well, that might be something different, but by and large, I think that folks are passive. The second is that they happened at or near the time of someone's death. In each of the cases, some type of a crisis or at or near the time of someone's death. And in each case, it was someone in the family, either the immediate family or our extended family. So someone that we knew. The last observation that I would make is, I'm not sure that I'm recounting these exactly as they happened, that they're exactly accurate to the letter. And what I mean by that, I guess I'll give you an example. When my grandmother told her experience, my dad was 11 years old. So he heard the experience at that point. And then he told me years later when I was 11, when I was a kid. And so Now I'm 69 and I'm telling you. So there's been a span of time here, about 90 years has passed since this experience happened, and it was first heard by someone and then passed on from there. But I think I have the crux of the experience as it was originally incurred. My own personal experiences, I'm more confident about those because they're personal on the one hand, and also because afterwards I made some notes about those. I was making notes about a number of things that happened, write the experiences down shortly after they occurred. And so that brings me to some of the suggestions that I would have. And the first would be, if you have an experience like this, write it down as soon as you can. And I would suggest that you write it in 3 parts, and that the first part would be a who, what, when, where, just the facts kind of write-up. So who had the experience, the date and time that they had it, where they had the experience, and then the basic factual details of the experience. I would suggest that you then go on and write a second document that would be your feelings about this, what you were feeling before the experience took place, the types of emotions that you were feeling during the experience, and then after the experience. And the third part that I would suggest you put together is, what do you think this is? How do you think it fits into the larger picture, or is it something that is a mental situation? Whatever you feel it is, make some notes about that. After it's written down, I would suggest that you share it with someone that you trust, so that you're in a non-judgmental kind of a situation. You're just recounting it, someone's listening to you, asking questions about it. And so at that point, I would want to give some kudos to IANDS, because I think that it's a great forum to share these types of experiences, and again, a non-judgmental type of situation. And kudos too to friends and family members and so forth that would listen in a similar way. And so that brings me to my final thought here for the talk. And that would be that whatever these are, however they occur, the fact that there was an experience makes it a fact in your life, a point on a timeline of your life, a historical fact. And if it's in your family, it's part of your family history that something like this would happen. Now, when my dad would tell these stories years ago, he would tell them with respect, and my mom would listen to them with respect. And so my sister and I picked up this type of feeling about these experiences, and I think that that was a good thing. I will say that before I had experiences, you'd be talking with a friend or something like that, and they'd say, well, my uncle had an experience a while ago, and they'd describe it. And then I would say, well, my grandmother had this experience when my uncle died years ago, and I would share this. But after having an experience, the way that that my folks acted and talked about these things was very helpful to me. The fact that they shared them, very helpful to me in working through my own feelings about these experiences and these situations. So I would say, as parents and grandparents, we have the ability to affect some things, to get some information across, to share our attitudes with people. And so if you have an experience like this, I would suggest that you share it, pass it on to your family. Folks did that for me, and it was very helpful to me later on. I didn't realize how helpful it would be. And so thank you very much for listening. And that's all for me. Thank you.